and I will help you, but let's all connect on LinkedIn.
Great, thank you. Well, Richard, that was a great lead into what I'm going to be talking about today. And again, this is meant to be interactive. It's not a lecture. So your questions are important and helpful, and don't hold back. So what have I got up here? Anybody recognize that? You know, the first time I did this presentation, it was also to Bing, but you know, people in the room said, "Is that Schwarzenegger?" It's like, yeah, absolutely. So the presentation is about, you know, essentially how do you navigate the new normal, you know, for job search or finding clients if you're an independent consultant. Because things have changed dramatically from, you know, even 15 or 20 years ago. So I really like the idea of the, you know, improvise, adapt, and overcome mantra that Gunny Highway used in Heartbreak Ridge. Now, any former military folks here? What service? Army. What years?
1970 to 75.
Okay. So this is probably after you, the Grenada invasion.
Oh,
Yeah.
84, I think.
83, 84, yeah. So we'll come back to that, but just wanted to sort of set the mood that we're not going to war necessarily, but we do have to think sort of like a warrior, especially, you know, based on Gunny Highway's recommendations. So let me see if I can do all these things together. I don't have too many slides, but I do have to figure out how to advance them. And say what? Well, it's on slideshow, but oh, here we go. Let's see if I can. Okay, here we go. All right. So what is the new normal? That was a question. No, not really. So what are you guys finding out there? In other words, what's different about the situation? What are you having trouble with? What are your observations?
I would say, for the preponderance of my industry, it's younger, smarter. It runs the gamut globally. So a significant amount of both Indian and Chinese in the market today in the high-tech sector. So it's different, and then of course it's less amenable towards older individuals within that space, right? So they're looking for the double E computer science master's degree, MBA, you know, at 25, 26.
So there might be some ageism going on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Technology is playing an issue.
It changes daily.
Any other thoughts? So you got continuous education kind of a situation? Right. Right.
I mean, I started with Fortran and COBOL.
In the marketing world, it's become so specialized, you know, especially you've got digital marketing, and within that you've got SEO and website design, and you know, then you've got social media. It's all very specialized, and there's not really hardly anything as a generalist. And
right.
Someone who's really good at a lot of things, but not a deep dive, and that may be true in IT as well, but that's what I'm seeing in marketing.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what's more important, to be a generalist or a specialist these days?
I think it's generalist.
Yeah. Any other votes?
Yeah, or the qualifications may say 5 years digital marketing experience, and they mean that deep, not broad like I had it. So the continuing education is a must. And to your point, it probably makes sense to be good at one thing and maybe knowledgeable of the others. At least you got that one thing, plus the generalist. But there seems to be a lot of need for specificity today.
Yeah, and that education thing is an interesting dynamic because it's not what it used to be. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So let me just give you, some bullets on, what I'm seeing out there and what I've heard. I went and looked at a report that was done by the Bank of Britain a couple years ago. And they were trying to sort out, where we're going through the digital age and what that's going to mean for employment. So we'll get into that a little bit. But we're kind of in an interesting situation right now. Richard talked about the best economy, best employment situation here in the U.S., and which is true. But the rest of the globe out there is really kind of, in a funk a little bit, aren't they? Yeah, even the Chinese aren't getting the kind of growth they used to. Right. That's going to be a hard Brexit, not a, yeah. So, so the U.S. is the engine. The rest of the world is, trying to figure out where things are going. And there seems to be a big backlash towards globalism and more towards, taking care of your population in your own country. Again, we continue to break records on the unemployment level. Again, I'm kind of jaded about how unemployment is calculated. A lot of times it's more political than not, but even at the U6 or the higher levels, it's still coming down dramatically. And I think the more important statistic is probably actually the percent of the population that is, employed. And that number is dropped dramatically also. The growth of the independent contractor ranks, it's sort of an Uber world out there, and it's continuing to happen. The fact of the matter is that 1099 situations offer a lot less risk to an employer as well, and more flexibility, especially if you're a startup or if you're, trying to adapt to change generated by the whole digital transformation. Automation is continuing to eliminate jobs. That's going to, continue to go for a while. Don't know exactly where that's going to settle out. The Japanese are really going headlong into robots. Somebody wrote that it was kind of interesting. They're saying, well, of course they're going more into robots because their population growth is falling off a cliff, and they're going to be way below their current levels. So, so I guess you need a robot, to make up for all the. Right. Yeah, but the robots I'm thinking about are the, the two-legged kinds. Yeah, but yeah, they did sort of pioneer that. Now, when I first did this presentation, we were in a, highly, charged environment where new regulations were coming into to play, especially in the U.S. at a pretty, dramatic rate, including Obamacare and all that. We're easing off that here in the U.S. I don't know if the rest of the world has sort of gotten the message. So the additional regulations continues to stifle growth. And it could be an opportunity for the U.S. if the rest of the world is out there, adding more regulations and dampening their growth abilities. Public debt, it seems to be a crisis to me, but a lot of people just love it. And there's a real breakdown in our major institutions, and that, I'd like to hear your thoughts, especially on that last one.
80,000.
That globally or U.S. domestic? What?
Well, there's primarily U.S.
Uh-huh.
Yes, 80,000.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know what that's, and I was told very specifically, and I will tell you who said it, but I was told very specifically that that's to make the bottom line appealing.
Yeah.
Because the only way to get to that bottom line after the Time Warner merger was to lay off 80,000.
Yeah. Well, layoffs are interesting, and I've watched them over the years. And, the fact of the matter is that people announce layoffs, and, it helps their stock market, at least in the short run. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, their stock price. And oftentimes those layoffs are never quite what they said they were going to be. Oftentimes it's through attrition, or they realize, well, gee, we can't lay these people off. Mergers and acquisitions, you've got the whole issue of redundancy of people, and so that makes a lot of sense. I'm really pleased in the last tax act, we sort of eliminated, or at least significantly reversed the differential between the U.S. corporate tax and the rest of the world. That was, I don't know, a lot of people didn't quite get that, but that just made it like the U.S. was a candy store for offshore companies to come in and buy our companies, because their value domestically was a lot lower than it was internationally because of the tax rate. And so that differential just created a really, screwed up overall market. Say what?
Non-US companies have to be confident that it's going to stay at that level.
Well, I hope it does. I certainly hope it does. As long as Trump's in position, I don't think he's going to let that. And we didn't come all the way down to either. We dropped it quite a bit, but what is it, around 28% or something like that? Is the 20? Okay.
And they're never going to completely get there, like maybe they don't lay off the whole 80,000 people, but that's the goal.
Right.
So with that in mind, I think what people need to understand is you can't just manage your job search or manage the job you're in. You need to manage your career.
Yeah.
So that means you have to look out ahead. You have to
Where's my
not wait until something happens.
Where's my checkbook? I need to write you a check for that one. Thank you very much. I can end my presentation now.
Cost of overhead alone, benefits is significant.
For the millennial population and their desire to do things differently, it doesn't match with how companies are.
Yeah.
It also creates a benefit for at-will employment states like Georgia and most places in the
Is
southeast.
there any doubt that it's not at will?
Oh, yeah, California, Washington, there's
New
loads of
York.
places. New York, Pennsylvania. Yeah, basically a lot of places that are not in the Southwest, Texas, and Southeast. So when companies assess these states to move into, the at-will thing is a big deal. So there's 1099, which is the most flexible, at-will, which is a little more flexible because you don't really have to do as much. But one of the things that creates the advantages in our economy is the labor market flexibility. You know, the fact
Right.
that people can switch, get fired.
Right.
These are some of the structural headwinds that exist in Europe.
Right.
And to a larger, another extent in China. They just don't have this flexible labor market. People, when they don't have jobs, tend to get mad at the government who's giving them all their benefits. So it's actually an advantage of the U.S. economy and broadly. It makes
Right.
us more adaptable and more flexible. But
And understand there's a lot of benefits to freelancing and from both the employer's perspective and the individual, but there's still there's 6 or 8 tests that you have to meet as a company to make sure that, hey, you're not running afoul of the IRS and paying somebody as a freelancer when they really should be an employee. The other thing is that it's not uniformly appreciated out there by employers.